Hey everyone, welcome to the Extra Point Show this week.
How's it going, everybody? Sorry we missed a week. There was a hurricane that was coming through where I live. Luckily, didn't hit us directly, so which was lucky. But power was out for a day and a half or so. Could have been a lot worse. I'm sure
Yeah,
some of you have heard about it.
definitely.
There's pictures of damage in other parts of Florida that are much, much worse. So everything is good now, fortunately, though. So
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that it missed you guys. Obviously, other parts of Florida did get hammered, so T's and P's going out to everybody affected by the hurricane. Hope everybody's doing all right. And glad that it fucked off and, hopefully hurricane season, you know, to quote Pineapple Express, I thought hurricane season was over. It is not.
It's like
Apparently.
it's like a 9 month thing here. Apparently, it's like
Is it
hurricane season's
fucking
been.
nine
Yeah, I
months out
can't.
of the year
I
there's
It's like
hurricanes?
8 or 9 months. I can't tell you what the months are, but someone told me that
This
once. So like, yeah, it's hurricane season from this to this. I'm like, dude, that's like the entire year almost. What do you mean? Like,
This guy over here trying to fucking bait me to go to Florida. It's fucking nine
hey,
months out
it's
of the
it's
year.
it's usually pretty good
When's
here,
it?
like
When's it the
especially this
non-hurricane
area.
month, bud? When's it the non-hurricane
It's
month?
the winter. I know it's like probably November to like March, I want to say, and I
Okay,
think any other than that is hurricane season. But like.
of course, of course,
That's just what they
of
say. It
course.
just rains frequently. It's not like it's usually that bad, but we did get lucky here. It missed us because, like we were saying, other areas got pretty much destroyed, especially by the water. So,
Yeah,
and I am pretty close to the water here, not that close, but yeah, it could have been extreme flooding here the way it was there. So, very glad that didn't
well,
happen.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess talking about the football stuff related of the last couple weeks. Probably number one would be the situation with Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins starting quarterback. Obviously, he ended up leaving the Buffalo Bills game 2 weeks ago with an injury. At the time, they ended up saying he was being evaluated for what they thought a back injury, not a head injury. He ended up returning to the game. Miami comes away with a 21-19 win over the Bills, which has been the Bills' only loss of the season. The on 4 days of rest, Tua goes out there on Thursday Night Football against the Bengals, and in the first half, he ends up taking a sack, and ends up like landing hard on his like back, and the back of his head ended up hitting the turf pretty hard,
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean, definitely an intense looking hit. Um,
What's strange though, I mean, it wasn't it was kind of a hard fall, but like it's not something you usually don't see. Quarterbacks go down like that, they fall back. I mean, it's not
yeah,
out of the ordinary. It didn't, when I first saw it, I was like, well, it didn't look like it was that bad, but I guess if he already had an existing injury, I
yeah,
assume that
that
must have
that
gotten
may have
re-aggravated.
been the
And
situation,
especially with the
and I
thing with
mean,
his hands in the position they were, that's what I think when everyone saw that, they're like, well, something's clearly like seriously wrong here.
right,
So that I feel like the
yeah,
pre-existing injury must have had something to do with why that happened. Because I mean, it was a hard hit, but it wasn't like that severe, I
yeah,
thought.
yeah, and they were saying on the broadcast that the doctor that they have like standing by said that that's like a neurological response to head trauma. So once I heard that, I was like, oh shit. Because like I told you, I was like, I thought, which I didn't see any of this happen on the play. I thought it was maybe something with his hands. Because, the way that his hands were contorted, it looked like maybe he like
Yeah,
fell and like
and he
broke
just fell
fingers.
back. It's not like it
Yeah.
wasn't.
So I was
Like I
like,
was
I
saying, it
didn't see his
wasn't that
hands get
bad.
twisted
Like,
up under a player. Like I didn't see anything. So I was like, what happened? But then I saw
yeah.
the head hit, like the helmet hit the grass. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, that must have been what it was. And, obviously having that pre-existing situation. Now that being said, the NFL did respond by making several different moves. They ended up firing the independent neurological consultant for the game. Not sure if there's like any. The NFL is conducting like an internal investigation. It hasn't been said whether they're looking into like any type of a malpractice after Tua was cleared and able to return to that game, because obviously he should have never been playing in the game
Yeah,
against the Bengals to begin with, especially on just only 4 days rest.
he shouldn't have
And
probably came back and finished the game against the Bills either.
against the no, of course not. Yeah, absolutely not. So because of that, the NFL has come out and they've made a statement saying that they need to amend the current concussion protocol, with player safety in mind.
I thought they were already pretty strong on those rules anyway, but it seems like maybe this is just their team doctor or whatever that kind of messed up, because clearly he shouldn't have been cleared to go back out there, and he was. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the statement made by the NFL and the NFL Players Association, it's a joint statement, said that the NFL and the NFLPA investigation into the application of the concussion protocol involving Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa remains ongoing. Therefore, we have not made any conclusions about medical errors or protocol violations. The NFL and the NFLPA agree that modifications to the concussion protocol are needed to enhance player safety. The NFLPA's Mackey White Health and Safety Committee and the NFL's Head, Neck, and Spine Committee have already begun conversations around the use, and this is key, the use of the term gross motor instability. So that's a thing that they're going to be looking, as a player's like motor functions and their ability to return to a game. So that's going to be the emphasis that they're going to be putting on. And we anticipate changes to the protocol being made in the coming days based on what has been learned thus far in the review process. The NFL and NFLPA share a strong appreciation for the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultants who contribute their time and expertise to our game solely to advance player safety. This program has made our game safer for the athletes who play it for the past 12 seasons. So that was the statement that they issued. So what those changes are to the concussion protocol haven't been revealed yet, but obviously they plan on making some changes based on that gross motor instability.
yeah, I thought they had already made a lot of changes in recent years, on player safety and things like that. So I'm curious what additional things they're going to have now. I mean,
well, yeah, there is a very step-by-step process, because obviously anytime a player is seen taking any type of hit like that, they're always evaluated. You always see them go back into the locker room and they're evaluated. They have to go into the concussion protocol and make sure that they can clear, with any tests. But obviously, with things like brain injuries, it's not always like as cut and dry. Sometimes that stuff's like inconclusive, and I guess like Tua was saying that it was a back injury, and that's why, because he had kind of like hobbled on the field, like that would be a sign of a concussion, like he kind of like lost balance, but yeah. He was saying that he had a back injury, and that kind of like also, I guess, could be a symptom of that. So that was why. But definitely shouldn't have been cleared to return in Buffalo. So that was bizarre.
Yeah, that's where I'm the most confused, is that he was cleared to go back. That doesn't make any sense. Like, that seems more like a team issue. Like they kind of fucked up. Like, I thought the protocols they had in place were already pretty strong, but apparently not, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be he won't be playing in the next game. Just wanted to mention that when the Dolphins played the Jets this week. Yeah, so he's going to at least end up getting 1 week off. And then just the last thing we'll mention on this was Dr. Bennett Amalu, the famed neurologist who's been credited with finding chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or also known as CTE, in former football players, has stated that Tua Tagovailoa should stop playing football after suffering his latest concussion. He came out with a statement saying, "Tua, my brother, I love you. I love you as much as I love my son. Stop playing. Stop. Hang your helmet up and gallantly walk away." So, and
he's probably not wrong. I mean, yeah, he's probably not wrong. I mean, it was bad, man. You don't usually see a player who's, the motor skills going out. Does the hands like that's
I've never seen that. I've seen a lot of concussions, but I've never seen like that response to it.
Yeah, and that seems pretty severe, and that's probably why that doctor is saying that. Just retire, which is that's gonna be such a hard thing for him to do. No football player wants to do that
at this point. But I mean, sometimes you make that choice. I remember Chris Borland was an undrafted linebacker that the Niners had. He came in, he played 1 season with us. He had an insane amount of success. He had like 130 tackles his rookie year, but he suffered like a concussion, and he'd had concussions in college. So after 1 season, he just elected to walk away. He retired. He never came back. And a lot of like people say that, he's a quitter. Like you'll still see people in some Niners groups say Chris Borland's a quitter. But I mean, he made a choice for himself. Like, the concussions weren't worth it because obviously they take a toll.
Your long-term health is more important than football. Like, that's stupid. Yeah. Like, especially if you're unfortunate enough to get concussions like that and you've had several, that might be the right choice. I mean, it doesn't always happen, but if you're someone that happens to it a number of times, every concussion, I know it gets more and more dangerous and more damage can happen. So
yeah, it's just too bad because like it seemed like Tua was finally, and like I said, I mean, I've been critical of whether Tua could be an NFL, starting quarterback, and he really came out and he balled this year. I mean, he was having a great year. So I mean, and it's rough to see this happen to him just as he was starting to get his career on track. But yeah, so as far as some of the games from Week 4, we're just going to go into it real quick. Obviously, we did talk about the Dolphins Bengals game in great detail as it pertains to Tua. As far as the outcome of that game, the Bengals did come away with a 27-15 win, which now has the Bengals 2-0 in their last 2 games after an 0-2 start. Miami falls to 3-1. Obviously, a key thing there is they lost Tua, but Joe Burrow had a good game, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns. Looks like the Bengals offense is getting back on track. We had
I imagine the Dolphins' spirits were a little bit crushed too after seeing what happened to Tua. That can affect the team's mentality. So
yeah, I can imagine, especially when they have to bring the card out. Anytime you bring the card out for a player, it's always rough.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely demoralizing. And then there was the London game, the 6:30 a.m. game between the Vikings and the Saints. Vikings
6:30 for you is not 9:30 for me over here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was much more manageable to watch.
Yeah. Right.
I did wake up at 6:30 to watch that game, and it was a banger of a game. It was a good game. Yeah, the Vikings coming away with a 28-25 win. Kirk Cousins, throwing for 273 yards, 1 touchdown, 147 of them going to Justin Jefferson. The Saints are 1-3 now. They've lost 3 straight games. So they've got a real good defense. As we've mentioned, they played the Seahawks this week, but it's just that offense just not able to get it going. Andy Dalton started the game because Jameis Winston was out with a bad back, and he ended up throwing for like 236 yards, getting the red rifle back in there in some London action.
Yeah, it was a very close game. I mean, the Saints definitely.
It was a better game than I thought. Yeah, for sure.
If the defense had just held up a little better in the last quarter, they could have gotten a win there.
More than definitely. And then we had the Browns blowing an opportunity to go to 3-1, losing to the Atlanta Falcons 23-20. Dropped the Browns to 2-2 and moved the Falcons up to 2-2. So Nick Chubb went off. I mean, that continues to be the story in Cleveland. I mean, Nick Chubb, 19 carries, 118 yards, 1 touchdown, continues to lead all NFL running backs in yards and, fantasy points. Nick Chubb is fucking going off.
I think who I'm playing this week might. No, he doesn't. He has Saquon Barkley. That's what I was thinking of.
Saquon's up there too. I mean, they're like 1-2 in fantasy. Yeah. So I mean, Saquon's been going off as well. And then we had the Cowboys picking up a 25-10 win over the Commanders. Cooper Rush going to 3-0 this season as a starter, which is kind of inexplicable. The Commanders are 1-3 now after the 25-10 loss. How many times did Carson get sacked in that one?
I don't know.
It was less. It was only 2.
Less, but it was less. Okay. Well, that's good at least. But he still had no time. He still had no time the entire game. You know what it was? Because they were running the ball a lot more, and he was doing all dink and dunk because they didn't have no time. But yeah, I
saw Gibson finally got more involved than he had been in weeks past. So that was good to see. They do need to continue that. I mean, Gibson absolutely needs to get more carries.
The running game did come together more, and yes, and Brian Robinson's coming back. That should help as well. And also,
Yeah,
that game could have been a lot different. It was within reach several times. There was 2 picks that were called back from penalties. There was over
right.
120 yards in penalty yardage.
Yeah.
So it was self-inflicted wounds on that game.
Yeah, I mean, and that's been a lot of what it's been, like just can't protect, self-inflicted wounds, penalties, just
Hmm.
things like that can be cleaned up. I mean, I saw an interview with Ron, and we'll obviously talk more about this later, but where Ron
Yeah.
had said that obviously he knows that the team's better than they're playing, and I would agree. I mean, if this team can get hot, I mean, I'm not, I don't want to get like overly optimistic at this point, but I mean, it is still early. Still a lot of time.
It's a matter of the O line, dude. There's a lot of talent on the team. I mean, we'll get more into
Yeah.
this in the Commander segment, but yeah, it's that O line, dude.
Well,
We also had that crazy Seahawks Lions game, probably
yeah.
going to be the highest scoring game of the season. Nearly over 93 points total. Seahawks came away
Yeah.
with the win.
Go ahead.
I was going to say Seahawks came away with the win, 48-45 over the Lions,
Yeah.
improving to 2-2, and the Lions dropping to 1-3. But anyone who had Gino Smith or Jared Goff on their fantasy teams,
Yeah.
starting
Yeah.
that this week, you
For sure.
you did
Yeah.
probably won, I assume.
Yeah. I mean, if you didn't have him on the bench, for sure. But yeah, I mean,
That would suck
was,
if you did, because then you see all
yeah.
those points. I hate that. I hate when that shit
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. It was a hell of a game. I mean, Gino threw for 320, 2 touchdowns, had a rating of 132.6. Jared Goff was 26 to 39, 378 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. The Lions at one point ran a well-executed fake punt, which was pretty nice. Jamal Williams, the Lions running back, went off for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I'm surprised that the Lions hung 45 because the Lions were without Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they were also with DeAndre Swift. So those are like their 2 big offensive weapons, and they still scored 45 points. So
Yeah,
this Detroit offense,
very surprising, and also the fourth quarter, they had 22 points alone in the fourth quarter.
right?
Like,
Yeah,
that's not something you see from the Detroit Lions like ever. So
this is a different Lions team. If they could just figure out defense, I mean, they'd be a pretty decent team, I think. I mean, Motor City Dan Campbell's got that offense ready to play, and I mean the Seahawks, quietly, at 2-2, Geno Smith's been playing a lot better than people give them credit for.
Geno Smith is actually outplaying Russell Wilson at the moment in terms of his stats. I saw that earlier, which is crazy.
Geno's the 7th rated fantasy quarterback right now in the NFL.
Wait, where's Jared Goff rated? Because I picked up Jared Goff over Carson today. Should I take in Geno instead?
I don't know. We can look at that real quick, bud.
Do you just mean in points, or do you just mean like in general to pick him, like for 1 week, or in general?
I mean in points, yeah. So let me get you the exact number here because I can look it up. And then I'm going to do fantasy points as the main thing. So Lamar's first, obviously. Josh Allen second. Jalen Hurts is third. Patrick Mahomes fourth. Jared Goff is fifth. Yeah. So stay with Goff. Wow, he's got fucking 88.64.
Yeah, that's why I picked him up. I'm like, well, it was either him or Geno, but Jared, it was a little bit better. It looked like so.
Yeah. Carson's quietly got 71, but I mean he's also had a couple bad weeks.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do better with Goff. He's gonna be a little more consistent, I think, because that O line in Washington. Because I mean, if the O line gets better and they're starting to look better, maybe I'll pick Carson back up. But I'm pretty happy with Goff and Dak. I mean, when Dak comes back, I'm not sure who I'll start between the two.
Tom's only got 50. And Tom's only got 60 fantasy points. Ugh.
Yeah, Tom had a shitty first 3 weeks. He only went off like the last.
I mean, you gotta assume that the fucking greatest player of all time though figures it out. Like, I mean, that's what I'm counting on.
I mean, your roster is by no means like bad. It's like you have good players.
No, it's a talent. Like Joe Mixon's starting to fucking. I was happy because Joe Mixon finally had a good game. I was like, thank God.
Like I'm starting to be happy with my team and who I have after making some moves and shit. And I did get lucky to get like some good players drafted automatically for me, so that helped.
To answer that question, Jared Goff is slightly higher rated in fantasy points than Geno Smith.
And he said he was fifth, right? And Geno is seventh.
Yeah. So Jared Goff.
We have the Titans and the Colts. The Titans took down the Colts 24-17. moving them to 2-2. Colts dropping to 1-2-1 because they had that crazy tie game.
Yep.
Tie games are always crazy. Like no matter when it happens, like it's always you're like, God damn, how did two NFL teams tie?
Right,
Like,
right. Yeah, exactly. And both teams, I remember, they had an opportunity. That was when Rodrigo Blankenship, the kicker, got cut.
yeah. They both missed like multiple attempts, right? Like,
No, that was the Steelers-Bengals game. But
oh,
he
you're
missed
right.
a 45-yarder in overtime. But yeah, I mean, the Titans are starting to play a little bit better after they blew a Week 1 game to the Giants. Interestingly enough, in this game, they scored all 24 points like they did in that Giants game in the first half. So they managed to hold out and beat the Colts, but they didn't score anything in the third and fourth quarters. So
Yeah.
you guys have them this week. So maybe that'll stay true. I mean, the Titans offense hasn't looked great. Derrick Henry had a better game. He had 22 carries for 114 yards.
Mhm.
So, I mean, he's always a threat. But, I mean,
Yeah.
Tannehill's not a great quarterback. So,
Yeah, I'm less concerned with the defense has its problems, but I'm more concerned with the offensive line. But
Yeah.
if they're only playing one half of football, then it should be perfect because that's what the Commanders usually do. You know, they play one
Yeah.
half of football. So
yeah, we'll
if
see.
it's two
might
teams
balance out.
playing one
It
half of
might balance
football,
out.
it might be great. Maybe it'll be a really close,
Yeah.
good, entertaining game, and maybe we'll win.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not optimistic right now, but I'll talk more about that later.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Titans haven't made the move yet. I mean, even though they're 2-2 now, they probably wouldn't since they're playing 500 ball, but haven't
Yeah.
made the switch at quarterback yet. Interestingly enough,
I imagine they'll probably stick with him for the time being.
yeah, before they go to Willis, yeah, probably as long as they're in contention, they'd probably stick with the veteran. And then probably the worst game of the week was the Bears-Giants game. This game was sloppy last season when it happened, too, in the rain between Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm were the starters last year. This year, the starters, obviously Justin Fields and Daniel Jones, but the result was a 20-12 Giants win. So the Giants, they're a very sloppy 3-1 team. And the Bears are perhaps an even sloppier looking 2-2 team. Those teams are just a mess. Both teams in the passing game. Let's just talk about this real quick. Justin Fields, 50% completion. He had some good yards. He was 11 of 22 for 174. No touchdowns.
That's impressive.
No
Only 11 caught passes for 174.
Yeah.
I mean, the stats are awful, but I'll give him.
Yeah,
that.
they were
That is a lot of
throwing
yards.
deep. Darnell Mooney had a 56-yard grab. So that was a lot of it right there.
Nice.
Obviously, the Bears don't really run the ball, or I'm sorry, that's all they do well is they run the ball. They don't throw the ball well, and they were without top running back David Montgomery. So between Khalil Herbert and Justin Fields and Tristan Ebner, they ran for 150 yards. The Giants, on the other side, Daniel Jones was 8 of 13 for 71 yards. No touchdowns,
God.
no picks. And he ended up leaving the game in the third quarter with an ankle injury. He was replaced by Tyrod Taylor, who ended up leaving with a head injury. The backup quarterback after playing a couple of series. And at that point, that was the only two quarterbacks that the Giants have. So I don't know if you heard about this, but they ended up having to Saquon's the emergency quarterback in that situation because they don't have a third guy on the game day roster.
Are you joking?
So-
I did not know this. What the fuck?
So they didn't have him throwing, but they had him they won the game with the Wildcat. They were already up, but they just kept running Wildcat, where they'd line up with like Saquon
Wow,
and he'd either
I wish
take a
I had
direct
seen
snap.
this.
Yeah.
Shit.
So it was a very sloppy game between these two teams.
Of course, the
Justin
Giants
Fields
still had
got-
to freaking win, though. God damn, man.
Yeah.
NFC
They sacked
East is all
Justin
going
Fields
great
6
except
times.
for Commanders. Wow, 6
Yeah.
times. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
I will point
It's
this.
not-
Daniel Jones did have 68 yards on the ground, though, and 2 touchdowns before leaving with an injury.
Oh, okay.
And
So he was
Saquon
doing
had
something.
31 carries for 146 yards. So Saquon continues to get absolutely abused as far as carries go. I'm sure he's got way more carries than any other running back in the NFL this season. In fact, I can verify that. I'm pretty positive. Yeah, Saquon's got 84. Joe Mixon's second with 82. So Saquon does have more rushing attempts than any other running back. which is what I would have expected.
Yeah.
And
We got the Eagles beating the Jaguars. All the NFC East teams winning but us. Fucking great.
yeah, the Jags were down a lot, and they kind of like rallied in the game, made it within one possession. This was another. There were a couple games that were played in just terrible rainy conditions, but yeah, the wind did move Philadelphia to 4-0, the only undefeated team in the NFL. Dropped the Jags to 2-2. This was notably Doug Peterson's revenge game. Doug Peterson returning to Philly, where he, of course, won a Super Bowl, and not quite able to get the win. It did not help that his young quarterback, who's been having a great season, Trevor Lawrence, lost 4 fumbles, so that wasn't great. Like I said, it was rainy. But besides that, Trevor Lawrence was 11 of 23, 174, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Jalen Hurts, 16 of 25, 204 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Ran for 38 yards and a rushing touchdown. The Eagles ended up running for 210 yards and 4 touchdowns total. So that continues to be obviously their bread and butter. They are very good on the ground with that multi-dimensional running attack with all the running backs and then Jalen Hurts. Definitely a dangerous team. They keep running the ball down everybody's throat, and that's obviously why they're 4-0.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And the Jets, possibly with the upset of the week, beating the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-20 in Zach Wilson's return. Obviously, Zach Wilson getting his first action of the season. The Jets had been getting held down by Joe Flacco the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, he had a bit of a rough start. I mean, he had a decent enough game, but a 50% completion rating is never good.
Yeah. He did only complete 50% of his passes, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Zach Wilson's play of the game. I mean, the Jets had the play called. I don't know if you saw it on any of the post-game shows, but did you end up seeing the play that the Jets ran for a touchdown?
I don't think I did.
Okay, so they set it up like they were going to run a reverse, and then they flipped it to Berrios, their receiver, and Zach Wilson runs into the flat, and he catches the pass, and he's wide open for a touchdown.
Oh yeah. I did see this. I did see it. He catches the pass. That's right. I did see it.
That was the play call of the game. Of the day from any team, any NFL team.
Yeah.
So Salah showing some creativity down there with the Jets, and pulling the upset of the day, getting the 24-20 win. What's notable about this game is obviously for Steeler Nation, I'm sure they're rejoicing because after a 1-3 start and only scoring 6 points at the half, Mike Tomlin officially making the change to go to Kenny Pickett. After the game, he said that it wasn't for sure that they'd be going to him, but they have since confirmed that it will be the Kenny Pickett show moving forward. His first official NFL start will be coming up this Sunday against the Buffalo Bills defense, which is very good. But Kenny Pickett's first NFL action, if you look at the stat line, it's not going to look very good.
Yeah, it doesn't look good.
It was 10 of 13 for 120 yards, no touchdowns, 3 picks.
Yeah.
But 2 of those passes should have been caught by the receiver, and they were on tipped passes that ended up getting intercepted. So technically none of Kenny Pickett's passes ended up hitting the ground. They were either caught by his guys or the defense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it'll be interesting to see what he actually does with a full week of preparation and against a dangerous Buffalo defense. But I'm sure Pittsburgh fans are happy to make that change from Trubisky because he wasn't really doing much for him.
I would expect so. And
getting the biscuit out of there.
And speaking of the Bills, they beat the Ravens 23-20, putting them up to 3-1 and dropping the Ravens to 2-2.
Yep.
Josh Allen had kind of an off game, I would say, for him.
Yeah.
19 for 36,
for sure.
213 yards, 1 touchdown. I mean, he still won the game, so ultimately it doesn't really matter. But that's not the kind of stats you usually see for him.
That was the third and final rainy shitter game of the day. Played in just bad conditions, and Josh Allen running for 70 yards and a touchdown. Lamar on the other side. Yeah, what's interesting about this is a matchup of the top two fantasy rated quarterbacks in Allen and Lamar, and neither one of them had a great game. Lamar on the other side, 20 of 29, 144 passing, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, but he did have 73 yards on 11 carries. Josh Allen, 11 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown, so just about the same amount of yards.
That weather, man, it takes a toll.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never going to see the same kind of stats out of a quarterback when the weather's like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Both teams running for, over 100 yards, obviously. Diggs was limited to 62 yards on 4 catches. Mark Andrews, shockingly, held to 15 yards on 2 catches. You know how much Lamar likes to go to him. He really didn't do shit in that game.
I know, right?
And then the Chargers ended up beating the Texans to keep the Texans winless. Texans are now 0-3-1, and the Chargers are 2-2. This game ended up being, it was 27-7 at one point. The Texans did end up rallying with a good second half, but still lost by 10. Notable in this game was Austin Eckler, who hadn't scored a touchdown, the Chargers running back, in the first 3 weeks of the season, had 3 touchdowns in this game. Justin Herbert was 27-39, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns. He ended up putting up like 35 fantasy points. Davis Mills on the other side.
Damn.
Yeah, he had a good day. Davis Mills, 26-35, 246, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. The notable thing here for the Texans is rookie running back Damien Pierce, who I remember mentioning that I thought would be good on the show, to pick him up. So definitely, if he's still available in your league, go ahead and get him, because he took all 14 of the Texans' rushing attempts, gained 131 yards and 1 touchdown with a long of 75, good for a 9.4 yard per carry average. So if he's still available in your league, Damien Pierce for the Texans, pick him up.
I was going to say, you were clearly right about that one. Shit. I mean, those are some good numbers there.
Sometimes get lucky with those, yes. Sometimes. And like I said, I know that the other option they've got is Rex Burkhead, and they like to throw to, like, Burkhead had 5 for 39 through the air and a receiving touchdown, but clearly out of the backfield, he's going to be getting their carries.
Yeah. And fantasy is a lot of, it's all chance what happens in the games, but if you do know at least how different teams work, and if, their running back's out, start this guy, there's a lot of things you can do to increase your chances. Absolutely.
And we had the Cardinals, who are trying to get that offense on track, picking up a 26-16 win over Carolina. The Panthers continue to look like an absolute mess. They're now 1-3. Arizona's 2-2. Which every team in the NFC West.
Hey, don't be so mean to them. All right, the Commanders look like absolute garbage, also. So,
I would honestly say that I think the Commanders have more of an identity right now than the fucking Panthers do. I mean, the Panthers just go out there and they got Baker Mayfield every week, and it seems like he's got good receivers, but they just can't get him involved. And the Panthers can't throw anything further than 5 yards down the field. They throw a bunch of wide receiver screens that don't work to DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, and it's just not good play calling. I don't like it. I would say that the Commanders, if they played the Panthers right now, they'd beat them. I would say that hands down.
I hope so. Didn't we play them in the preseason? Who won that game?
The preseason, but it's the preseason,
True. A lot of starters not playing.
Yeah. So Kyler, didn't have a great game. He didn't have a terrible game either. So yeah, Kyler had 207 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Baker threw for 197, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. J.J. Watt ended up playing in that game a couple days after he ended up having a heart procedure. I guess he ended up having his heart shocked back into AFib and ended up producing 3 tackles. So yeah, J.J. Watt continuing to be kind of a badass at his old age there. But yeah, like I said, every team in the NFC West now 2-2. So even though the Niners technically are the team in first place by way of a tiebreaker. at this point. But all the teams are pretty much even record-wise. And then we had a game that was a lot closer than it had any right to be, just based off who the Patriots had available at quarterback. But the Packers getting a 27-24 win over the Patriots. It was Brian Hoyer that got the start, but obviously Hoyer got hurt early on. Hoyer started actually pretty good. He was 5 of 6 for 37 yards before leaving with an injury. Bailey Zappi came in there, the rookie. He was 10 of 15 for 99 yards, 1 touchdown. No interceptions, sacked 3 times. On the other side, Aaron starting to get a little bit hot there. He was 21 of 35, 251, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. So after a slow start, the Packers are now 3-1. Patriots fall down to 1-3. So, Patriots are in that tough division. Obviously, after years of dominating it, they've got the Dolphins and the Bills now that are good, and even the New York Jets that are 2-2. So Patriots in an unfamiliar spot at the bottom of the division. But that could change.
See them in last place. Yeah, it's early. Anything can happen.
Losing Mac Jones did not help. I mean, obviously,
No.
anytime that your quarterback misses any time, I mean, obviously with the high ankle sprain, he will be back, but not for a couple more weeks.
Yeah, we have the Broncos-Raiders game. The Raiders finally got a win, so they're no longer 0-3, moving up to 1-3, which is good for them.
Yep.
Broncos falling to 2-2. It was a 32-23 game.
Yeah, the Broncos offense looks better than it has. Obviously, they came off that shitter, that 11-10 win over us a couple weeks ago, which that was probably one of the worst played football games that I've seen in my life on both sides. Just a very sloppy, poor game. So it was good for both teams to play way better this week.
That's how I feel watching the Commanders the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's been a lot of bad football around the NFL early on. There's been a lot of good football too, but definitely share of bad teams as well, or at least bad starts. But it's still early, as we've said numerous times. And Russell Wilson was 17 of 25, 237, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Sacked 3 times. He had a rating of just under 125. So I think that's probably his best game of the season so far. Notable for the Broncos, though, they did lose starting running back Devonte Williams to a torn ACL. So he will be missing the rest of the season, which means it's going to be up to Melvin Gordon and Mike Boone, the backup running backs, in Denver, because they're going to be without a key weapon there. And he was their main pass-catching back. So it's obviously going to be a loss for them. And on the other side, the Raiders, Devonte Adams, who, seems like he has a good game and a bad game. This game he had a good game, 9 for 101. And Josh Jacobs went off. He had 28 carries for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, like you said, Raiders finally able to get the first win of the Josh McDaniels era.
Yeah, they definitely needed it.
Yeah. There was a stat that the Broncos actually haven't beaten the Raiders in Vegas ever since the Raiders have come to Vegas. So I think it's 6 games now. They've yet to beat the Raiders in Las Vegas, or since they've come to Vegas. So even the games against Denver, in Denver. So they've got a little winning streak going against them. Chiefs and the Bucks in a high scoring affair on the Sunday night game. Chiefs coming away with a 41-31 victory. Chiefs go to 3-1. The Bucks are 2-2. Tom by far had his best game of the season after struggling the first 3 weeks. So Tom was basically having to do it all for the Buccaneers besides the wide receivers. He was 39 out of 52, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, for a quarterback rating of 114. The Buccaneers managed to run for 3 yards on 6 attempts, so they basically abandoned the run game. They were playing from behind a lot. So when, you say that Tom got him back in the game, Tom literally got him back in the game because all they were doing is throwing. Mahomes was 23 of 37, 249, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. And Edwards-Helaire had 19 carries for 92 yards and a touchdown. And Kelsey had 92 yards and a touchdown. So they both actually had 92 yards and a touchdown. But
weird.
Yeah, Kansas City's offense continues to be good. They're leading the AFC West at that 3-1 record. Obviously, Bucs losing to a good team. I still expect them to be pretty good down the road. Obviously, They gave themselves a chance to be in the game at the end without a run game, which was pretty impressive. Usually, if you can't run the ball at all, you're getting blown out.
That game was also super interesting because we both have multiple players from the teams, and they're both high-powered offensive teams, so it was kept it exciting.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember you have like Mike Evans and stuff, and
Edwards-Helaire, and you have Tom Brady. So
yeah. I have Tom and Fournette, and Fournette wasn't running the ball, but Tom kept throwing to him. So Fournette still caught a touchdown, so he had 17 points just with what he did through the air.
Yeah.
So, which is why I wanted Leonard Fournette, because he's a threat in the running and passing game, because he does both well.
Yeah.
And on the Monday night game, last game of the week, we continue our winning streak. Kyle now 7-1, I believe it is, against McVay, and Jimmy Garoppolo 7-0 lifetime against the Rams. So as limited as Jimmy might be against that high-powered Rams defense, he's gone 7-0. So Jimmy just historically just beats the Rams. That's what he does. So we came away with a 24-9 win. We needed the win. Obviously, the heat would be on, both Jimmy and Kyle at this point if they would have fallen to 1-3. With the win, we end up being tied in first for the division right now. The Niners defense, we'll talk more about this a little bit later, but currently ranked first in the NFL, really just harassed Matthew Stafford. He ended up throwing 48 pass attempts, was sacked 7 times and intercepted 1. And the Rams ran as a team 18 times for 57 yards, good for a 3.2 yard per average carry. And outside of Cooper Kupp's 14 catches and Higbee's 10, the Rams really didn't have anybody doing any work for them. I mean, that offense is one-dimensional as hell. They're not running the football, and outside of Kupp and Higbee, they're not throwing the ball to anybody. They don't have OBJ anymore. They sent Robert Woods to Tennessee. They picked up Allen Robinson, but he only had 2 catches for 7 yards in that game. He's supposed to be their number 2 receiver, and he's not really taking any of the pressure off of Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp had 14 catches. I mean, Cooper Kupp's amazing, obviously, but you can't expect that man to be your only game plan. Your only playmaker. That's just not going to be a good offense, especially against a good defense like the Niners. The Niners weren't going to let Cooper Kupp as one player beat him. So we'll get more into that game later, but we ended up sacking him, Matthew Stafford, 7 times. So Stafford not looking great so far to start the season. Not off to a good start. I think that recaps all of the Week 4 action. So we're looking forward to Week 5. First game we've got coming up here is going to be the Colts and the Broncos tomorrow night. And notably, the Colts will be without starting running back Jonathan Taylor. I don't know if you knew that. He's got an ankle injury. So Nyheim Hines, who's on your roster, you may want to start him because he's going to be getting the bulk of the carries.
Didn't I literally just drop him for Raheem like an hour ago?
Maybe you did. But Raheem's going to do well too.
But I also have Edwards-Helaire and Alvin Kamara. So assuming Kamara's healthy, then I plan to start both of them. And if I have to, I'll put Raheem in for somebody. So
yeah, for Kamara it was a rib, so I don't know how long they're expecting him to be out. But he didn't play in that last game, so hopefully he's not going to miss any considerable time.
Yeah, I saw that big 0 on there when I was going against you. I'm like, well, I probably lost. That game was nuts.
It was. the London game. There's another London game this week. It's Giants Packers. Battle of 3-1 teams. So it's going to be Aaron versus. Is Daniel Jones going to be healthy to start?
I think he's hurt with the ankle injury. So
and Tyrod's possibly in concussion protocol.
Oh man, they're gonna go Packers. Yes, take the Giants down. We don't need every team in the NFC East.
I mean, if you've got Saquon Barkley, expect him to get a lot of running attempts as he has all season.
Oh shit! My opponent has Saquon this week.
No, he's gonna get work. But the Packers, like, if you're the Packers, load the box, 8-man front. Just expect make whoever they're playing at quarterback beat them, because they don't have any receivers now either. Sterling Sharp's out with an ACL. Giants have Richie James and Dante Pettis. They got some of our castaways. Yeah. Anyway, all right, just a couple other things to cover. After returning for just 2 games, slot receiver Cole Beasley is officially retiring from the NFL after catching 4 passes for 17 yards in 2 games with the Bucs. He has elected to be home with his family. Obviously, being on the Bucs, they just went through all the Hurricane Ian stuff, as you did. And him and his agent gave credit to the Buccaneers for handling the Hurricane Ian situation with first class. They credited Todd Bowles and the Glazer family. Beasley is 33. He signed with the Buccaneers on September 20th. He is now retiring about 15 days later. He was quoted as saying that he thought he would never get to play again. And, he was grateful for the opportunity. Obviously, he's most known for his time with the Dallas Cowboys and then the Buffalo Bills. Back in 2020, just 2 seasons ago, he ended up having a career-high 82 catches for the Bills. So he had a real good season, but the Bills ended up letting him test free agency, and he was unsigned. So certainly, a productive player across the NFL. Finishes his career with 554 catches for 5,726 yards and 34 touchdowns. So, pretty solid career.
Strange turn of events, though, to sign with the team and then, just over 2 weeks later, be like, I'm going to retire now. It's just strange that he would go and make the move to sign with the team to so quickly decide, no, I'm done now. Like, what? It's a little odd.
Yeah. It is definitely one of the stranger retirement moves. It's like, why would you have accepted the contract in the first place? But, definitely, maybe he saw, too, that he was signed at a point when the Bucs really, they were without Mike Evans, Julio Jones was hurt, and Godwin was hurt. Now they've got those guys back. So it could be a situation where, he was going to kind of get phased out of the offense anyway. And, maybe after the hurricane, it did just make him want to be closer to his family. I mean, he's 33 years old. Maybe it's a good time to step away.
Yeah, good age too. I just think it's odd he signed the contract at all.
It is.
That's just the only
kind of a bizarre situation. It's like, well, you took that Buccaneers money, and then you just I don't know.
Yeah.
But the other situation to mention is in that Monday night game between the Niners and the Rams, a fan ended up running onto the field, and was like, he had a canister of pink smoke that was going off. Not sure what that was all about. I thought, maybe it was one of those gender reveal situations at first.
Wait, isn't it like the intercept cancer thing right now? Isn't that a thing going on right now? Like I'm thinking of breast cancer.
Yeah, no, that is a thing. That's like what October is for. But this was, it was for Right to Rescue, which is an animal cruelty thing. So I ended up going to the website. It's help the whistleblowers facing prison time for exposing factory farm abuses and rescuing suffering animals. So that's what it's for. RightToRescue.com was the message. So he had a can of pink smoke. He was running down the field, and L.A. Rams linebacker and former Seahawk Bobby Wagner ended up with pretty solid hit on the guy. We'll go ahead and put the video up. But guys coming down the sideline, and Tack McKinley, the other linebacker, he ends up kind of taking a step towards him, and then Bobby Wagner just ends up stepping out in front and just Just really takes him out. You can tell that the guy really didn't see it coming. There's a couple images like zoomed in on the guy's face, like of him just like really getting lit up. And it's just, like, obviously the biggest hit this guy's ever taken in his life.
It's you don't usually see the player like when that happens. It's usually the officials out there.
Yeah, it's usually the security or something.
Wrangle them. Yeah, and then to see a player do that, it's like.
Yeah.
And then the guy's trying to sue him for it, which is like, man, you're the idiot that ran out into the football field during a game. Like
that's what we were going to mention.
Nothing's going to come from that. I would expect, Yeah.
It was confirmed by Lieutenant Hyung Fan from the Santa Clara Police Department on ESPN Wednesday that a police report was filed Tuesday afternoon because this is an active investigation. Information was limited. According to TMZ Sports, the individual is an activist for the Berkeley, California-based animal rights group, Direct Action Everywhere, and it was trying to raise awareness for a trial involving the alleged theft of pigs from a factory farm. Wagner said Wednesday, here's what he said, can't really focus on it. I'm more concerned about the security guard that was hurt trying to chase him. You've got to do what you've got to do. Wagner reiterated Wednesday that as players, you never know what a person has in their hands or in their pockets when they're on the field. And then he also said there's consequences for your actions, which is 100% true. Usually when I've seen streakers and, people running onto the field, not that this person was streaking, but, any type of person running onto the field, a fan of any kind, usually doesn't end well. Usually best case scenario, you end up in jail, even if you don't get your ass lit up by a security or a player. So,
right.
Not an ideal situation. And then probably kicked out of Levi's Stadium forever, which, they may or may not care about. I would definitely think that would suck if that was me.
Yeah.
And then when asked what he thought of the police report, Rams coach Sean McVay said, I think that we all know where Bobby's intentions were, and I support Bobby Wagner. That's where I'm at with that. I don't think anybody will disagree. And shockingly, McVay, I don't disagree with you for once. Yeah, you can't have that shit. You can't be exposing these fine fucking, what's the coach call the finely tuned winning machine? Isn't that what he calls it in The Water Boy? He's like, this is a finely tuned winning machine.
I think so.
Like,
yeah.
you can't be exposing these athletes to like fucking people with fucking God knows what in their pockets. Jesus. I was asked the other day what I thought. I don't remember who asked me, but they're like, "Oh, what do you think of like the NFL players going to other countries and playing?" And I hate it. Okay, let's talk about this for just a moment. I hate NFL players going to other countries. We're taking our fine athletes, our best athletes in this country, and we're sending them over there. When Brittany Griner is stuck over there in Russia, she can't get out for having a weed. Like, we can't be. Not to mention, you ever see an Eli Roth movie? This is Halloween. Happy Spooktacular Halloween, everybody. Happy Spooktober. But you ever see an Eli Roth movie, fucking Hostel? You go over to fucking Europe, and you end up with your fucking kidneys removed when you're in a fucking bathtub. I don't fucking need
or your dick cut off with a pair of scissors. Yeah. You remember the end of Hostel or Hostel 2? I forget which one it was.
Brady. I don't need Nick Chubb. I don't need fucking, Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't need Deebo Samuel getting exposed to things like that in another country. No, thank you. Keep our athletes.
They just went to London, man. London's fine. It's not. No, they're not going. They're not going to play in like the Czech Republic or, fucking. I don't even know if that's a bad place. I don't know why I said that. Even
there's a lot of ecstasy disco clubs in London, bud. You get fizzed out of your fucking mind.
That sounds like it might be kind of fun. Shit. Yeah. So let's just get into this other thing here. So fantasy segment. Everybody obviously playing fantasy football. We did a running back segment a few weeks back. I meant to do this segment earlier. We've just been kind of like overwhelmed with other shit. So I'm just gonna drop some facts on you real quick with some quarterbacks to go ahead and start week 5, and then some quarterbacks
to go ahead and sit, and I'll give you some facts behind each one with why I think that is the case. Okay, so we're going to start out with quarterbacks to start coming into week 5. Quarterback number 1 is going to be Mr. Joseph Burrow. Joe Cool himself, Joe Burrow. After a slow start, as we've mentioned, the Bengals have won their last 2 games. Burrow's put up 20-plus fantasy points in the last 2 games, and he's topped over 275 in the last 3. He's also getting Joe Mixon more involved, which, they're opening up the running game more, which is exposing, it's allowing those receivers to go off. Obviously, because you have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase is getting more work, and Tyler Boyd. So Joe Burrow has a lot of great options. And he's playing a Baltimore Ravens team that he's very familiar with and has had good success against. Obviously, the Ravens are usually a team that's got a formidable defense and you're a little bit scared of, but the Ravens haven't been that same scary defense that they've had in the past, and they've actually given up 8 passing touchdowns already this season. So not a great start for them defensively. So if you've got Joe Burrow on your bench, I would go ahead and start him in a favorable matchup this week. Next quarterback I have is Tom Brady. After a slow first 3 weeks of the season, Tom has gone off. Last week, obviously, throwing 59 pass attempts. The Buccaneers ran the ball 6 times. Tom basically did it all for him last week. So
I don't expect that to be the trend going forward, but also
No.
who sits Tom Brady? If Tom Brady's on your fantasy team, who
Right.
actually even ever sits him?
Yeah, if you're sitting Tom Brady, I've started him all 4 weeks so far. And, I continue to start that because, the moment that you put Tom Brady on the bench, he goes off. He had 385 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He had 25 fantasy points. And let's talk about this. His matchup is a favorable Atlanta Falcons team that Tom Brady is 7-0 against the Atlanta Falcons lifetime. Tom Brady has never lost to the Falcons. I don't look for that to continue this week. Start Tom Brady if you have him. All right. Next quarterback that I have is Russell Wilson. Now, this wouldn't have been something I would have been saying a couple weeks ago, but he's coming off his best game after throwing 237 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he also started to run a little bit. He actually led the Broncos after Devonte Williams went down with the ACL injury. He led the Broncos with 29 yards rushing. So this was really the first game that Russ was actually being Russ. And I'm glad that we've already played him and gotten that out of our system. We don't have to see him again this season. Thank God. The days of us having to play Russ twice a season are over. So I continue to look for him to have pretty good success here going into.
It seems like their offense is starting to come together a bit more now. It's
exactly
yeah.
They've really started to gel more as an offense, which is definitely what they hadn't done. After coming off a really terrible game against us, where they only scored 11 points. But yeah, I look for them to continue. They are playing a Colts team this week that is not that great. The Colts have been good against the run, but they've had some struggles stopping teams through the air. So Russell's still got a lot of weapons. He's still got Cortland Sutton. He's got Jerry Jeudy. So Russell's obviously still got some weapons there. But I look for him to have a big game against the Colts as he gets more comfortable in the Broncos system. Also, this is one that you know about. Start Jared Goff or pick him up because I know Jared Goff's available in a lot of leagues. So if you have the opportunity to pick him up, he's 5th in fantasy points right now.
I dropped Carson because I oddly have Carson and Dak, and Carson, he started off really good, but at the last 2 weeks, I'm like, all right, man, it's time to make a change. So I dropped him and picked up Goff since he was available. Gino Smith was also available. I see that he's one of the ones on the list for that you're saying to sit, but he's also done very well in fantasy. So I'm curious as to why you would suggest to sit him.
So yeah, and it's more matchup driven, and definitely I'm not saying to draw, and we'll get into that in a second. Let me just finish with my Jared Goff thought here, and then we'll get into the sit guys, and it's a matchup driven thing. So Jared Goff obviously coming off a game where he didn't have DeAndre Swift, he didn't have Amon-Ra St. Brown, his top receiver, who he loves to go to. So basically throwing to Hawkinson, his tight end. He had a great game. Ended up throwing for 4 touchdowns, over 300 yards. Jared Goff, 5th rated fantasy quarterback so far this season. Obviously, I don't know who saw that coming. I sure didn't. But yeah, if he's still available in your league, definitely pick him up. This Patriots defense, the Patriots are 1-3, like we've mentioned, and the defense hasn't been as good as they've been in years past. Outside of Matt Judon, they really don't have a lot of threats. Matt Judon's very good, but they've allowed the 9th most fantasy points, averaging 20.5 per quarterback this season. So I look for Jared Goff, who's already been producing well, to have another big game against the Patriots. So now for quarterbacks to sit here. Gino Smith is ranked 7th among fantasy quarterbacks right now. So he's been playing great, a lot better than anybody expected. So I know you were asking why sit him, and that is purely because of a tough matchup against the Saints defense this week. So if you've got Gino and you've got a better option, I would start that option over Gino this week. And, look for maybe Gino to get back on track next week. I'm not saying he's going to have an awful game, but the Saints defense has averaged giving up 13.2 points per opposing quarterback. So that's what,
Wow.
fantasy that's what quarterbacks are coming into and averaging. And remember, they limited Tom Brady to 20 points against them. Tom had a very rough game against them. I think he got like 9 points. So they've been playing very well. The Saints defense has, at least. Their offense,
Okay.
not good, but their defense has been playing well. So I'm merely saying to sit Gino in, an unfavorable matchup this week against a tough Saints defense.
Okay. But definitely, if you have Gino on your roster, keep him.
Yeah,
He's not
pick up
dropping
Gino.
by any means.
If Gino's in the league, Gino's been exceeding all of our expectations. I would pick him up, but I just wouldn't start him this week. I just don't think week 5 is a good matchup for Gino.
If you have a second quarterback that's not doing not particularly great, it wouldn't hurt to explore other options like Goff or Gino.
Exactly. Now we've also got Matty Ice over here, Matt Ryan, who he's coming off his best game with the Colts, throwing for 356 and a couple touchdowns. In a loss to the Titans, but they're going into a tough matchup here against the Broncos defense that a couple weeks ago held. Obviously we didn't play our best game, and it was Jimmy's first start, but they held a pretty decent Niners offense to 10 points. So this Broncos defense, pretty tough matchup. Obviously Matt Ryan seen a lot of better days in the NFL. The Broncos have allowed, let me see what it is here, 5th fewest points per game to opposing quarterbacks at 11.3. So obviously they're a tough matchup. And let me tell you why this is even going to be harder for Matty Ryan. Matty Ryan's not going to have his top weapon in Jonathan Taylor with a sprained ankle. So it's going to be Naheem Hines and a lot of loaded boxes, which is, the Broncos are going to be daring Matt Ryan to throw on him. And the Broncos have, pretty decent corners. So I definitely don't look for that to be an easy matchup, like with Patrick Surtain back there. I think that he's going to be in for a rough game. Another quarterback that I would sit this week is, I'm sure a lot of people ran and picked this guy up as soon as it was announced that he was going to be the starter, Kenny Pickett. But Kenny Pickett has the, I wouldn't have blamed Tomlin if you waited one more week before making this change at quarterback, because Kenny Pickett's got to go up against the tough Buffalo Bills defense in his first start ever. Obviously, he ended up playing a half against the Jets and Robert Saleh's defense, but that Bills defense has been unreal. They're 3-1. So bringing Kenny Pickett, who Kenny Pickett's looked very good in the preseason, and it would have looked a lot better if he didn't have those couple of tipped passes for picks in, the Jets game. But
Yeah.
I definitely don't look for him to do anything significant in this game. I think that he'll still have a pretty good season, and I think Kenny Pickett's going to be real good. Could even be a candidate for, it's still early enough in the season that if he starts the rest of the way, he could be a candidate for Rookie of the Year if he goes off enough. But I don't look for him to have a great game here. The Bills have allowed, right here, fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks at 8.2. So I think it's going to be a rough day for the Rook. I'd have started Trubisky one more week. I mean, I'm all for the Kenny Pickett movement, but I'd have waited one more week and started the veteran, because I think in this situation it gives you a little bit of a better chance against a pass rush. That's going to be the Buffalo Bills. So we'll see. And then the last guy, Matty Stafford. Matt Stafford, fresh off a Super Bowl win, has tossed 6 picks in his 4 NFL games to 4 touchdowns. He is coming off a game against the Niners on Monday night where he could not even get his team in the end zone, despite throwing the ball 48 times. The Rams have seemingly abandoned the running game, which usually helps a quarterback when they're struggling. If you can't get things going and you can't protect, like Matt Stafford got sacked 7 times, typically you want to start running the ball. They didn't do that. Stafford obviously led the league in picks last year with 17. He's already got 6 this year. So coming off that Super Bowl high, the Rams aren't looking too hot. So if you've got Matt Stafford and you've got a better option, one of the better options I listed, I would go ahead and give them the start this week, because I don't look for that to change anytime soon. I mean McVay with his play calling has been kind of questionable to this point so far. Really, like I said, not involving anybody other than Cooper Kupp and Higbee, and no running game to this point. So kind of bizarre. The Rams have obviously been struggling. Stafford's been struggling against good defensive fronts. And this week, they actually have another tough matchup against the Dallas Cowboys and Micah Parsons, who's very good. So that's going to be a tough matchup between 2 pretty good teams. Obviously, Rams Cowboys, one of those teams has to lose. So I'm sure you're hoping it's the Cowboys.
I hope it's the Cowboys, obviously. Yeah. Go Rams for this week.
I know. But yeah, so those are the quarterbacks to start and sit for the week. Join us next week where we'll get into more fantasy related stuff. Hope you guys enjoy the segment.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's Commanders Countdown. We're going into week 3 of this just nightmare of football that we're getting the pleasure to be treated to every Sunday.
Yeah.
Coming off of a 3rd loss to the Cowboys, making it even worse than it needs to be, 25-10. This game, there's a lot to say about this team in general. The game, just to quickly go over, 25-10. Yes, there was 2 picks that were both called back by penalties.
Yeah.
The game could have played out much differently if not for a lot of self-inflicted wounds. There was over, I think, 120 yards in penalties. So among those things, and then on top of that, just coaching decisions. We had Jamin Davis on CeeDee Lamb all day, which just seems like a very poor coaching decision in my opinion.
Why was he covering their top receiver?
I don't know. There's so many aspects. I hate to be negative and just say, oh, the team sucks, but and the whole team doesn't suck. There's a lot of talent on the team that's very good. I'll start positively before I go into Jesus. The wide receiver core, very great. They look very good.
They've been good, yeah.
That's probably the one thing I can think of that's a bright spot. Carson, I think, has the potential to be a bright spot and be better than Heineke was, but the O-line, which is glaringly the worst issue that we have, defensive line hasn't been particularly wowing either, but nothing like the O-line. Carson has had 0 time almost every drop back that he's had the last 3 weeks. Against the Jaguars, it was a little bit better. I guess it's because it's the Jaguars. But the last 3 weeks, he's had 0 time. Yeah. So I don't think it matters what quarterback
nine times against Philly in the 24-8 loss a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that's
only
that's
sacked
terrible.
Twice against Dallas, but As we had mentioned before, the Washington did the best job that they've done all season at running the football. They stuck with it the most consistently. 27 rushing attempts. Gibson had 13 carries for 49 yards. Jonathan Williams had 5 carries for 48 yards with a long of 23, so he had a good game. J.D. McKissick 8 for 40, and Wentz had 1 carry for 5 yards. So 27 carries for 142 yards. You guys held the Cowboys rushing game, who had been they've been very good on the ground. They just had a great game against the Giants running, and Zeke had 19 carries for 49 yards, and you guys held Pollard to 8 carries for 6 yards, and Pollard's very good. So in total, 29 carries for 62 yards. So that rushing defense, I didn't realize that they had stopped the run that well in that game. So that's an encouraging sign, especially going into this week, playing Derrick Henry, who obviously he just ran for 114 for the Titans.
The defense did seem to improve a bit, I would say. I mean, it was still 25-10 by the end, but it's also... All right, so basically what I was trying to get at there is we had the 2 picks that were called back, which heavily affected us, and then also Carson threw 2 picks as well. Mm-hmm. So, we got nothing out of the ones that we recovered, and then he also gave up 2 more on top of that. So just a lot of things really not helping the game in general.
Yeah. Penalties were an issue. Penalties killed drives all day long. 11 penalties for 136 yards. Like you said, they on the 2 interceptions that the Washington defense got, there were defensive penalties that brought those back. Carson did throw the 2 picks, which unfortunately weren't called back. He probably had probably like pound for pound his worst game of the season, I would say so far. 25 of 42, 170, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Like we said, sacked twice, rating of 56.7. But I mean, he'd played well in previous weeks. He just hadn't had time. I mean, obviously, week 1 against Jacksonville, he had a good game. They just got off to a slow start, but
I'm hesitant.
Interesting. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm hesitant to put the blame on Carson so heavily, because watching the games and watching the O-line and how little time that he has, the only reason that we were mildly a little more successful this time, and it wasn't even successful with all the penalties, but they ran the ball better, and then also all the passes he was throwing were dink and dunk. There was because he has no time for anything to develop outside of 5 or 10 yards. So I think they recognized that. They knew the O-line only had so much ability, and then they actually made a plan for it. Didn't work, but it looked a little bit better and a little more manageable. But you can tell that Carson wasn't being able to be Carson. Carson can throw deep. At least he's supposed to be able to. I mean, and he looked like Alex Smith back there.
Deep at much at all. I mean, the longest pass reception of the day was by Jahan Dotson for 31 yards. Jahan was the leading receiver with 3 catches for 43 yards and another touchdown. Curtis Samuel had 4 for 38. Terry was limited to 2 catches for 15 yards on 6 targets. But like you said, a lot of throws to the McKissick and Gibson both had 3 catches a piece, so that's 6 to the running backs right there. 6 of his 25 completions, and then Logan Thomas 5 for 19. So he wasn't getting the ball, and then
he got targeted for very short dink and dunk stuff. That's why it's 5 for 19. I mean, he got some yards, but very very little.
John Bates 4 for 19, the backup tight end. So De'Ami Brown 1 for 6. He got his first catch of the season. Finally getting a De'Ami Brown sighting. But I mean, you definitely expect more from the passing game. I did one thing to mention, as I'm sure you noticed, for the first time this season, Scott Turner, who's usually up in the booth, was down on the field calling plays. Did you notice that?
Yeah, which is probably good. I mean, I think got to be an advantage to that.
Able to communicate with the players and strategize better. You've got a vantage point. You're able to see things like how the defense lines up better from the booth, because obviously you're in an elevated position, but obviously able to communicate with the players and strategize better, and potentially, obviously didn't pay dividends in that game, but we'll see what happens against Tennessee. That's going to be another matchup. Obviously, they're going to be without their top receiver, first round draft pick, Treylon Burks, who Tennessee drafted in the first round to replace A.J. Brown, who went to Philadelphia. But they still do have Derrick Henry. So, Tannehill's going to be looking to hand off to him a lot. And Derrick Henry's always a threat. And he after a slow start, he's kind of started to get going in recent weeks.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm not particularly optimistic with the way things have gone. I don't want to sit here and start blaming coaches and all that. I mean, O-line play, I mean, a coach can obviously only teach a player so much. And, when the players are available or what they are, then is it a coaching issue or is it literally just a personnel issue?
Are you thinking it's time to make changes? Personally,
I don't know.
Opinion?
Probably not yet. No, I would say it's only week 5, going into week 5. I guess there's a lot of time to hit the pay. Is a panic
button
being
hit?
There's a lot of intangibles there. I mean, players can only play to their ability. I mean, yes, coaching obviously makes a difference, but if a player's ceiling is what it is, if what you have on the team available just isn't going to be able to do what you need them to do, it doesn't matter who the hell's coaching it at that point. So. And the only people that really know that is the coaches and the people actually working with these players. They're not going to go out there and say, yeah, well, the O-linemen we have suck and they're not ever going to be able to do what we need. They're never going to go out and say that. They're hoping they can coach them and they can learn and improve. Yeah. But so far from what we've been seeing, it's been a shit show. Yeah. So I don't know if a coaching change would even make a difference.
And another thing too, just in closing with the offensive line, obviously Chase Roullier started the season. There was an update, as we mentioned. I don't know if I've said this to you yet, but after initially being thought that, with that knee injury, he was going to miss the rest of the season, he will return this season at some point. So that's good news. But the guy that they had in the interim, Nick Martin, the guy they just signed to play center, was learning the system. Wes Schweitzer also got hurt in the one game he started at center. So
that's another thing I noticed. Actually, you mentioning the center. I noticed a lot of the snaps were terrible, and Carson was having to duck, reach down, and that was probably another issue of it. It's the offensive line, man. If I had to pick one thing, that is the main issue.
He's had to play with 3 different centers between Schweitzer, Roulier, and Martin this season already. And
it's bad.
We're going
into
week
bad.
5.
I don't think anything is going to really improve unless that improves, and that sucks to say because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of avenue for it to improve. So I'm a little disheartened there. All the injuries and all that, it's not good.
Yeah.
But we got Brian Robinson coming back with a nice positive outlook. Jump into that real quick. Speaking of injuries, but surprisingly after
he
being
was on the non-football related injury list. But go ahead.
I'll say it. Surprisingly, after being shot, a month and a half ago, whatever it was,
literally a month ago, just about a month.
Yeah, and he's already back on the practice field out there practicing. So we should expect to see him back.
He could play this week
soon.
He could. There's a chance.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe one more week, but
give him
hopefully
one
it's this
more
week. If he's ready to go, hell yeah,
he looked great in the preseason, and I mean. Yeah. The running back hasn't really been. I mean, they had struggled to run the ball coming in. Obviously, Gibson hadn't had great games, but they really haven't stuck with it. So I don't think the opportunity has really been, as prevalent as they could have been. Obviously, if they would have stuck with it more. And a lot of these games, as we've noted, they've been behind, 2 or 3 scores going into the second half or something. So a lot of times in those situations, you do have to kind of abandon the run a bit.
Yeah, that's actually how it's been for the last 3 years. I saw some stat under Rivera, I don't know what it was exactly, but a large percentage of the games were down at the half. It's usually the norm. I did see that. So.
Yeah.
And I mean that's not even just under Ron. Years before, it's been it's been a thing for a while. So
playing in a deficit, it's definitely not ideal. I mean, obviously. You're definitely reducing the likeliness of being able to win games in those situations, and it's a bummer because obviously they do have a talented team. Obviously, they've got probably the best receiver core they've had in over 20 years, I would say, with Terry, Jahan, and
that's
Curtis,
why it's kind of sad seeing what we're seeing, honestly, because there's all that talent there, and it's pretty much being wasted. $28 million to another quarterback, and the O line can't block. And it's like they're not even playing. It's like they're like the the little dummies they have in football that they practice on. They're kind of like that. They're like, the players just that other players just boom right through. It's like
not ideal.
Fuck, dude.
Not ideal.
Yeah. So if we can see some improvement in that aspect in the coming weeks, especially coming up against Tennessee, I think there might be some hope if these other guys that are coming in to replace the injured players can step up. Then maybe give Carson at least a little bit of time to make something happen.
Yeah,
we might see Carson look a little better and all that. It's just I think that's going to be the main thing that we need to have improved.
And if the defense can hold up better, like you said, definitely a lot better against the Cowboys. Obviously, they were playing Cooper Rush, but
who's been doing great. So I mean, that's Cooper not Rush, even necessarily a knock. Like initially, Cooper like beaten by a backup, but damn, he's had a good several games.
Has been pretty good, yeah. But you guys did shut down their run game, and I mean, really, you only got burned by CeeDee Lamb, and obviously that was more of a matchup issue. He had 6 for 97 and a touchdown.
That was bad coaching decision there, that's for sure.
But overall, you guys held them to. I mean, Washington outgained Dallas on offense 297 to 279.
Yep, it's all those penalties, man. The penalties took away about half those yards, so that's
penalties and turnovers.
And I mean, if the picks that we had gotten, one of them was right by their end zone. It's just penalties is what made us lost us that game. But so we're going into Tennessee next week.
Win over Tennessee, yeah.
Hopefully. We definitely need it, man. 3 straight losses. It was nice to win week 1. We all needed that. But, all right, I mean, it's not going to be a playoff season most likely. But at least it could be better than this and see some effort out there. It's hard to see blowouts like this.
Wins are going to have to start happening or the seed is going to get hot for not only, not only Coach Rivera, but Coach Del Rio, Coach Turner. They're all, this is like one of those seasons where if you don't turn it around, the house gets cleaned. They fire everybody up out of there. Maybe even the GM, maybe even Jason Wright.
I mean, I would hope Dan Snyder would be the one to go out of anybody. I mean, that would feel like a win in itself. One last thing, like even if season's awful and all that, but if Dan Snyder was gone by the end of the season, that's going to feel like winning a damn Super Bowl for all of us Washington fans. So
that's true.
We could go like 3-14 or 3-13, and if Dan Snyder's gone at the end of the season,
at least there's hope on the horizon.
Like I'd be like, all right, sweet. Like it was still a good year. Like it's the only thing that could turn it around. I think for some of us is like even if it's a bad year, if we can finally get rid of Snyder, but I don't know if it's going to happen. You hear those rumors all the time. There's been another one recently where they're talking about possibly, getting rid of him. But we've heard that shit for years. So until something actually happens, I'm not going to get excited or expect anything. But hopefully a win next week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, go Commanders, go Washington. Hopefully we can shut down that Derrick Henry. Hey, what's going on, faithful? Thanks for joining us on the Niners News Update this week. We are coming off a win again to get us to 2-2 against our arch rival, the Los Angeles Rams. That's bringing, I think, Kyle Shanahan's record to 7-1 against Kyle McVay. Against Sean McVay. I don't know why I was thinking that. I guess because Kyle naturally owns Sean McVay, and Jimmy Garoppolo to 7-0 against the Rams. So, as limited as we know Jimmy might be at times, he is really good at beating the Rams. Obviously, with the help of his supporting cast, but he does really excel against that one opponent. And let's get into the game a little bit here. And this is going to be a 24-9 victory. Where the Niners defense harassed Matthew Stafford for the entire game. Matt Stafford threw 48 passes. He ended up having a 254 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. That pick was a really beautiful pass returned by Talanoa Hufanga on a really beautiful pick 6.
I saw that one. That was nice.
Probably defensive play of the night. Also, not to be outdone, though, were the Niners defensive front, who came away with 7 sacks of Matthew Stafford. Stafford had a quarterback rating of 71. Of those 7 sacks that we got, Bosa got 2. So Nick Bosa's sitting there with 6 sacks through 4 games. So he leads the NFL so far right now. I don't know if I mentioned that, but currently through 4 weeks, Bosa is ranked number 1 in sacks in the NFL.
On track for a record season, hopefully.
Yeah, he had 15 and a half last year, so I mean he's on pace to break that this year if he stays at this pace. Samson Ebukam had 2 sacks. He is the guy that's replacing D Ford as our other defensive end. He's got 3 sacks already this season, so great start to the season for him. Hassan Ridgeway got a sack. Charles Aminahu got a sack. And Diamador Lenore got a sack and 8 tackles, so good for Diamador, good for Demo. And Fred Warner had 9 tackles, and Dre Greenlaw led the charge with 15 tackles. So that was on the defensive side. The Rams had no sacks against Jimmy. Aaron Donald had 5 tackles, but no sacks. So
protecting him from Aaron Donald. That's great. Look at the O-line.
Yeah.
Must be nice to have a good O-line. Huh, jeez.
So here's the thing: our O-line has struggled coming against Denver last week. Obviously, on the play with the safety, obviously that was an issue, and then we lost Trent Williams. So we've had O-line issues. Plus, we have Banks and Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford on the offensive line, and they've proven that they're not as good as and Jake Brendel at center, who's not as good as Alex Mack was last year. And we lost Lakin, and McGlinchey's coming back from an injury. So our offensive line has had struggles, but we got Daniel Brunskill back. And Daniel Brunskill is like Aaron Donald's kryptonite. For some reason, he just really excels against blocking Aaron Donald. I don't know why, but after missing the first 3 weeks, Daniel Brunskill returned, and he had a good game blocking against Aaron Donald. And like we said, the Rams didn't get to Jimmy at all. Jimmy on the day was 16 of 27, 239 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Quarterback rating of 100.7. Jimmy definitely outplayed Super Bowl champion Matthew Stafford in this game. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than just the quarterback head-to-head. But if you're going to compare the quarterbacks head-to-head, Jimmy played significantly better. There's no doubt about it. Jeff Wilson, filling in for Elijah Mitchell, did pretty much all the running back duties. He had 18 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown. So we didn't see any of Tevin Coleman, and we didn't see any of Marlon Mack, other than on special teams. So continues to be the Jeff Wilson show for now. We'll see if Kyle ends up mixing in some of those other guys. As far as the receivers go, Debo caught 6 passes for 115 yards and 1 touchdown. That touchdown being by far... Well, it's tough to say. So, no, you'd have to give Debo the play of the night for sure, because as good as Talanoa Hufanga's pick 6 was, and it was great, I think that Debo just making basically the entire Rams defense miss had to be the play of the... I mean, and then he just ran through Jalen Ramsey. And then he trolled Jalen Ramsey on Twitter. I don't know if you saw that, but
I did see that.
Like Jalen Ramsey throwing a fit.
Uh-oh! Terrific catch and run. Uh-oh! One-on-one with Ramsey. Can't bring him down. Samuel, highlight reel, touchdown.
Yeah, he just totally trolled him. But yeah, that was awesome. The Rams defense hates playing Debo, man, because he's just like their kryptonite. He didn't really do it on the ground in this game. Only 2 carries for 2 yards, but definitely as a receiver killed it. Ayuk had 4 catches for 37 yards. Juice had 1 catch for 35 yards. Kittle had 2 catches for 24 yards in his second game back. He would have had a touchdown, but his toe was ruled on the line, which was called back.
You also would have won your fantasy game against me this week had Kittle's toe and not touched.
Mention that. I knew as soon as Kittle caught that touchdown that I had beaten him, and then they gave me the points in fantasy, and then they took it off the board. And I was heartbroken for George, and then I was heartbroken as well. I was like, oh, that's
what was the final point difference? 1.8 points.
1.8. He beat me by 1.8 points. So if that touchdown would have stood, I would have had that.
I'm watching that game. I'm like, God, I hope the Niners win, but please just don't let George Kittle touch the ball. And usually I love Kittle. I'm like, I want to see Kittle touching the ball. Yeah. If it was a weird night, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah. Well, he's been slow to get back into the offense. He's been blocking his ass off, obviously, but he had 4 for 28 last week, and he had 2 for 24 this week. So we haven't really been looking his way in the passing game, but that's as he continues to work his way back from a groin injury. But he's looked good out there. The one catch that he made for 20 yards, he looked like George Kittle for sure. And then even on the touchdown, like if his toe is just 2 inches more in bounds, then that's a touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, he's looked good. He just hasn't really been getting the looks, and I mean that's because we've been giving Debo and Ayuk those opportunities. But let's talk about what's on the horizon for the 2-2 Niners. We have the Carolina Panthers next, who are a 1-3 team. They are in the midst of starting out with Baker Mayfield. The Baker Mayfield era is 4 games in, and he hasn't looked great. He's coming off a game where he threw 197 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks against the Cardinals. Baker has a tough task in store for him against the Niners defense. It's going to be no easy task. Actually, one thing worth mentioning is our Niners defense is currently ranked top in the NFL through 4 weeks of the season. Coming off the Monday night game, we are allowing on average 161 yards passing per game, with an average quarterback passer rating of 73. Quarterbacks, have been really struggling against the defense. They've also been facing a 27.6% pressure rate from the Niners defense, which is 3rd in the NFL, and we have the 3rd most sacks in the NFL with 15, even though we're only blitzing 9.2% of the time. And blitzing, of course, is when we send extra rushers other than just our 4 down linemen. So we get home with 4 guys most of the time. It's usually going to be, your Bosa, your Ibukam, your Armstead, and your Kinlaw. And then we've got a lot of other guys that we can mix in there as well. So, yeah, I mean, Baker's struggling. They don't like to throw deep downfield to their receivers. They like to run a lot of receiver screens. So that's going to be, an emphasis. The Niners tackle well. So, I mean, I look for a lot of those plays to get blown up. Their best playmaker is obviously CMC, Christian McCaffrey. He's obviously always a threat, both in the receiving and running game. I remember, interestingly enough, this is funny. In the Niners' first ever game in 2017, Kyle's first game as head coach, we played the we actually played the Carolina Panthers, and they kicked the shit out of us, unfortunately. It was I'm just interested. What was the score? I feel like it was like 23-3 in Kyle's first ever game as head coach of the Niners. That game, of course, was started by Brian Hoyer at quarterback. And the Niners' offensive weapons at that time, we had an old Pierre Garçon, who, he's from Washington.
Yeah.
We had Carlos Hyde as our running back. Matt Breida was on that roster. Marquise Goodwin. We had Juszczyk. Rookie George Kittle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we got beat in an opportunity. Well, we actually got them back in 2019 on the way to the Super Bowl. I think that was the game where we destroyed Kyle Allen. So I certainly look for us to beat the Carolina Panthers. I mean, we're a lot better team offensively and defensively than them. And in game 2, Jimmy played a lot better. I mean, it seems like he's starting to get back and, get more reps since the shoulder surgery. and starting to get back into the swing of things. Obviously, the Denver game was a very bad game for Jimmy. I mean, that safety play was one of the worst I've ever seen, where he ends up drifting out of the end zone, taking a safety. And if he hadn't taken the safety, it would have been a pick six on a pass that was, intercepted and run into the end zone. And if that wasn't bad enough, we also lost Trent Williams on that play for a number of weeks. So Trent Williams out with the MCL sprain. So we've been playing without him. So that was probably the worst play all season. And, of course, we lose to the Broncos 11-10, and we give up a safety. We lose by 2 points when if we would have been able to hold on, we'd have definitely not lost that game. And we'd have been 3-1.
Hopefully that's the outlier. I mean, this week should be a victory for sure. Unless the Panthers just somehow wake up and are a different team. But
yeah, I mean,
based on
they
the
don't
previous
have,
weeks.
Outside of Brian Burns, they don't have much of a pass rush with the Panthers. So, I mean, their defense isn't very good. I've been saying for a few weeks now that I think Matt Rule, the Panthers coach, might be the first coach fired. I mean, he's 1-3. If he takes a bad enough beating to the 49ers to drop to 1-4, I mean, I could see the man getting shown the door in his third season here. The Panthers haven't won any more than 5 games in any of the seasons he's been there. So, if we can shut down McCaffrey, I mean, I really don't worry too much about their defense. I mean, I think we've got a good chance to win. Another thing that we'll close with for the week is the Niners' top-rated defense, as good as it's been, it's been electric without 2 key players. Jimmy Ward has not played a snap all season. Jimmy Ward, our all-star free safety. He hasn't played all season. We've had Tayshaun Gibson Sr. and Talanoa Hufanga in there, and they've been playing exceptionally well. But Jimmy Ward returned to practice this week, and also Jason Verrett, who's expected to become our nickel corner, also returned to practice, coming off an ACL injury last year. So those are 2 key players.
You're already really good defense, even better, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Damn.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm excited about that. Samuel Womack has been playing well in the slot. He's a rookie, but I mean, Jason Verrett's a guy. Obviously, we've talked about him a lot. He's been snake bitten with injuries, so I really hope Jason can come back and have a good season for us and stay healthy. I mean, this man's torn his ACL 3 times in his career. I mean, I just really want to see him stay healthy. I mean, he's a player that you just cheer for.
Yeah, you never want to see anybody get injured, especially multiple times like that. And that's got to have major wear and tear on his body. Especially where the injury is. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's at this point torn both ACLs, and he's a cornerback. And last time he played was in the 2019 season, and he played really well for us. So I mean, hopefully he can get back to that form. Former Pro Bowl player. But we'll keep you posted with that, with the injuries. Obviously, Armstead's been banged up as well, so hopefully he's able to get right. Kinlaw has been dealing with a knee injury as well. But hopefully we can get Trent Williams back and come away with this big win against the Panthers. I'm just happy to have put together a way more complete game after that Denver game, because like I told you, that Denver game was hard to watch. I mean, I watched all the way through that game, but that game was painful, man. I mean, we scored early on our first drive, and then to really do nothing else through the entirety of the game was just rough.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an outlier for you guys for sure. I don't think there's going to be another game like that. Unless it's another one of those really terrible weather games where anything happens. And
oh my god, I hate the weather games, bud.
Yeah, those you can never predict, but
yeah. We need to practice better for the weather games. I mean, I know I've joked around about it on the show. I don't know if Kyle needs to go, start paying extra for the water bill at Levi's and just flooding the field every now and then and just getting us used to playing in these sloppy-ass conditions. But obviously you don't want to risk injury either, so.
Right.
Yeah. But, yeah, join us next week. Hopefully we're coming away with a win. I certainly expect it. Obviously the NFL is a finicky bitch sometimes, but we're clearly the better team than the Panthers. And
absolutely.
Yeah, join us next week, everybody. Go Niners. And that's going to do it for the Extra Point Show this week. Make sure that you subscribe if you're not already. It really helps us out and helps us grow. Give us a like as well.
Absolutely. And if you're a Washington fan or a San Francisco fan, make sure to always check out the Commanders Countdown and the Niners News Update.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next week.
See you next week.